If you have a scale of 1 to 10, I had really positive vibes about Marathon just because of the people I knew working on it, and like the passion, and like they were really into Escape from Tarkov at the time. Tarkov was like pretty new at this point. It had only been out for like 2 years. They were playing a lot of that. And they were like, hey, can we make, our own version of Tarkov that's better in like Destiny tools and stuff like that, which I thought was really fucking cool. Let's get into this trailer. I'll stop yapping for a little bit and let's see where this goes.
I met a traveler from an antique land who said, "Dust and trunkless of stone stand in the desert. Near them, on the sand, half sun, a shattered visage lies."
Okay, I just wanted to say the use of Shelley's Ozymandias here, a sonnet, I think. And I don't know, it was a poem written in like the early 1800s. I think it's a really weird application of this. I think it's weird to put this in here because it like kind of fits because obviously like some disaster happened and civilization collapsed and that's kind of what they're going for, but it's strange. I don't think it fits well. Anyway, let's keep going.
Sneer of cold command, till that it's home to well those passions red which yet survive.
I just want to say, that showed really fucking well. That was really exciting. That was awesome. That was really, really cool. That fits in line with all the other cinematic stuff that they've shown, which was just a single trailer, a year ago or something like that, right? Very, very cool stuff. Very specific stylized art. I thought this was gorgeous. I thought it was wonderful. Really good stuff. Classic big Bungie, like amazing art. Nothing looks like Marathon that exists out there, and I think that's really good. When you look at the gameplay, it doesn't quite match the feel of those cinematics, which made me a little worried. So if I was talking about a scale of 1 to 10, I was sort of near a 3 because I was excited, but I'm skeptical. I worked at Bungie, so there are good things and bad things. You guys have seen a lot of the scandals that have happened with Bungie over the last 1.5 to 2 years. Not good stuff coming out of how the studio functions, what the culture's like, all of that. I don't want to get too deep in there, but that gave me some skepticism. After watching this reveal and hearing the team talk about it and what they were making, I would say I moved from a 3 to a 5. I'm still highly skeptical. I really want to play the alpha, see what the game is like. It's interesting. So what this game is, it's set in the Marathon universe. There are loose ties to the previous Marathon games. This is far in the future after the events of Marathon. The official commentary from the team talking about the narrative for the game and how it all comes together is that they're still working on it and they're still going to connect those narrative threads. But this game should not have cinematics and exposition in the way that some of the other story-driven games that Bungie's made. They've said that they want this to be more emergent gameplay, like found lore. So as you're discovering items that you're picking up and looking at, there's like going to be interesting lore bits that kind of flesh out the world more environmental storytelling. I think that's really good. I think they need to go in that direction because that wouldn't fit well with this game. So I'm hearing a lot of things from them that make sense to me. All of it is going to depend on how they execute. So as I've watched a lot of this footage and what I've looked at for Marathon, one thing I noticed that is dissonant with the cinematic stuff they've shown, if you're looking at this, everything is toned blue. Everything's really cool and I mean temperature-wise in the color palette. And I was realizing that's why it has a weird feel to it. So if you think about like moods and how people react to color, all of these cool tones bring your mood down. And that doesn't necessarily fit well with an action game. You need some kind of like bright popping colors and other stuff to kind of get moods up, right? So maybe that's why people have been reacting somewhat negatively. This is an extraction shooter. So the way it'll work is you go in with a squad of homies and you go into this PvPvE environment. So similar to Tarkov, you are hunting for things, fighting dangerous, AI PvE encounters, but then there's also other players. And it's sort of the same mentality of like anything you take out with you from a run, you get to keep and you can add to your kit and all that. So that's really compelling. I have seen some people comment that that's weird when you consider Bungie's current audience in Destiny in how that game is about collecting things instead of like building up this hoard of items that you've got over your, decade of experience playing Destiny. I think that this is a smart choice and Bungie needs to court a new audience, because I think the Destiny audience has fallen off. I can't really substantiate that with anything. I'm sure we could go look at Steam charts and see those numbers just on a steady decline. But the direction of the game has gone in a way that I'm not playing Destiny anymore. It used to be one of my favorite games. I haven't played Destiny since Witch Queen. I think the last time I played was we did, a ride-along interview with Mikowski about the return of the Whisper in Zero Hour, which I think became paid dungeons. I very strongly was against that. When I made the Whisper in Zero Hour, they were free content on purpose. It was supposed to be thank you people for playing. Destiny still has big secrets. They're all hidden in plain sight. That was the vibe. And that fully turned into monetizing dungeons. You have to buy a dungeon pass. I don't agree with that. I don't like how any of that stuff went. I don't think it was great. So that all of that being said, Marathon is courting an entirely different audience. That's a really good thing for Bungie. They can't lean on the Destiny audience. They need to capture a new audience because the Destiny audience is dwindling and shrinking, and I think people are just not here for it anymore. So some of the other people have said this doesn't make sense. Why would they do that? As someone who makes games, it makes a lot of sense to me, and I think it's a smart choice. Of course, it's risky, but it's what they need to do. Bungie's in kind of a dangerous position right now. The studio's future is hanging on Marathon. Destiny's clearly not going to keep them afloat. They were just acquired by Sony last year for like 3.6, over $3 billion, like about $3.5 billion. So this is a really important game for the future of the studio. And I think we're going to look at either the full collapse of Bungie and like off into the sunset they go, or they'll be returning to form, sort of rising from the ashes a little bit, right? I'm not trying to be all doom and gloom about Bungie, but the news about Bungie and the reception in the wider gaming audience for Bungie's stuff has been very negative or lukewarm for a couple of years now. So they need this. I think it's the right choice. I think they're going in the right direction. All that remains to be seen is if the game is actually good and compelling to play. A lot of the early impressions are mixed. Some people say it's good. It might be that they were paid to say it's good. We don't know that. I can't confirm any of those things. But I do know that common practice for AAA studios, especially if they're working with content creators and streamers, to say, you can cover this game, but there are certain things you cannot say. And the reason why they do that is because there can be a really, really negative impact on sales of the game if a very popular content creator says negative shit about it. It sucks because you, as a consumer, you watch your favorite streamer and you're like, oh, this is great. This is an honest take. Most of the time, it's not an honest take, especially if it's sponsored. It can't be, because that can really, really hurt the game. So modern AAA, just so you guys are aware, if there's a featured segment or it's sponsored or someone got this early look, it's usually very carefully controlled about the messaging because it's a major advertising beat. Just be aware of that as you're looking at stuff around this game. There are a couple people, I think it was SkillUp, that did some of the more honest takes. And while I agree with some of the things SkillUp was saying, he was also one of the people that was talking about how it doesn't make sense Bungie's courting a new audience. I think he doesn't get it there, and that's okay. He doesn't make games. I think it's a smart decision. I think they need to do this. They need a new audience. The future of the studio depends on it. So Marathon is still 6 months away. We're looking at September as like a launch date that may or may not stick. If the closed alpha goes poorly for reception, and what I mean by poorly is if people have negative reactions to it and they're not really fucking with it, Bungie's got a little bit of time to pivot. The amount of changes you can make in 6 months are really small. I'm seeing other people say, there's hundreds of people working on it. There's a team of about 300. 6 months is a lot of time for 300 people to do that. I'm going to say the reality of it is when you're working at this scale with these budgets, this game is done. You can't move that quickly. You have such a large team. You have to be really careful about how you spend money. Otherwise, the game doesn't release. They've made it worse, and the whole studio collapses. Everyone loses their jobs, and that's it. And it's, RIP. So we got to wait and see. That being said, that's why I'm at like a 5 on the scale. I'm very excited to check out the combatants in this, and what I mean are like the PvE AI enemies. All the early impressions said that they're very interesting. They're really cool to fight. They have some really interesting gameplay components to them. So seeing where all of that goes is going to be really cool. I'm checking out chat and I see you guys talking about money, and that is my really big worry. This is where I'm concerned that this game is competing with other games that are free to play. It's brand new IP. Even though it's based on Marathon, this is a new IP. You have to consider it as such. It's not as established. Think about all of that. So there's a lot we don't know, a lot of potential. I think the cost is potentially going to hurt it, and all the things that I was saying about Destiny. Then we go over to Joe Ziegler, who's the creative director for the game. So this I think is interesting. I know that the old creative director, Chris Barrett, he's the one responsible for the art style. That's what we're seeing here. Chris Barrett had a very unceremonious exit from Bungie. He was replaced by Joe Ziegler. Joe Ziegler was the guy who did Valorant. So that's great. That's a good game. Whatever, personal opinions are aside, that is a quality game, well thought out, well executed. There's hope there. If Joe brings his acumen here, helps usher Marathon into a good space, we could have some really compelling gameplay. Where I have issues with the monetization, Joe Ziegler, the Skill Up podcast, they were asking about monetization, and he gave this very PR-focused marketing response where he was like, we gotta figure this out, blah, 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 whatever. And then he ended with like, everyone has a different idea of what the right price is for them. I'm just gonna, throw a little shade here and say that that's a fucking stupid answer. I think the right answer is we need to cost the game enough for the studio to stay in business, and we need to make a good value proposition to the customer to say it's worth this much, and people are like, this game is really good, I'm gonna buy it for that amount. That's the correct answer. He should have said that shit. Instead, what he did was sort of push the onus onto the player and be like, well, if, $40 is too much for you, this game's not for you. Visually, I think there's a disconnect between the cinematic content and the gameplay content. I would love to see them make an adjustment there if they can. That would be really cool, just to get more of that feel back into the game. Again, we're only seeing this one map. There could be a completely different art style to the other maps. We don't know. They were saying they were going to ship with 4 maps. It sounds like, I'm a little skeptical about this too, because I don't know if it fits in an extraction shooter, but it sounds like their 4th map that no one knows about has like Destiny raid mechanics in it. And with the lack of proximity voice chat, which is something they said they won't do because that creates an incredibly toxic game environment, I firmly disagree with that. I think that's a silly take, and you should never index that way. You should always leave it up to the player to turn that shit off if they're bothered by it. Because having played Tarkov, I've pretty much only had positive experiences or really memorable, important gameplay moments interacting with proximity voice chat in Tarkov. It's only a win. I do not see it being negative. I don't know why they would choose to not do it. And I think it's a very silly choice. Here's my question. If you're getting negative reactions to a game that's not out yet, that's good. That means people care. If you get 0 reaction and you do this huge marketing beat, that's really bad. So the fact that people have strong opinions is a really positive indicator of what this game's potential is. So this is a good thing. I know there's a lot of negativity out there, but there's also a lot of positivity. So I think the middle of the ground, we have to wait and see. Get in there, play the game, decide for yourself. Don't judge it strictly based on other people's opinions. You really need to figure it out for yourself.